This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details. Fan.
Game 5 is another late one, and Carboni's has what you need to fuel you into the night. Visit one of their 30-plus locations to enjoy delicious pizza and get ready for a Minnesota playoff run. Find your nearest Carboni's today at carbonispizza.com.
From the forechecking feast to the football feast and the front court feast, talking about the Timberwolves and their game 5 tonight on KFAN against the Lakers. That takes place about a half hour from now. A couple of segments on the Wolves beginning about 10:35. But as the football feast would go, as we have shared during the course of the radio show, anytime we get a chance to chat with Minnesota Vikings general manager Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, it's always a very chill, relaxed conversation, and that moment takes place right now from Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center. Great seeing you, man. Things well?
Good to see you, brother.
So anything new with your boys? And I like to ask you about your kids to start conversations each and every time we chat, and from a different angle this time, because they'll continue to mature in age as we do these interviews. So I would imagine one of them probably has the fastball up to 50 miles per hour by now, right?
The oldest, like I said the other day, loves ball, which has been so cool because, my wife was actually a really great hooper coming up, and it's kind of rekindled that in her. And so the other night we actually got to do a date night to the Wolves game. So as a guy, you get to do a date night, get to get points with the wife and go see a basketball game.
Right.
So I'm a pretty lucky guy. But
indeed,
the kids are, he's shooting every morning on his own volition. This isn't a overbearing parent situation. And it was really funny. Obviously we've been going pretty hard lately for the draft, and the baby he knew mom and dad needed a night. So, Sunday night, he slept his best. He's probably slept in 2 months. The next night he decided to run it back the other way. But, no, it's been great. It's such a joy. The purpose and the passion you get from your family, your kids, it's something I've heard about and kind of experiencing now, and it's been a blessing.
Just to think back to Sunday for a second, I love how you laid that out, how vein opening it was to a certain extent. You said we actually got a date night. Okay, now it's a day game, but still it's you two. Absence makes the heart grow fonder in a lot of different situations. And, of course, the Kwesi Adofo-Mensah covenant has reliable people to watch the children so you can relax. Can you just think for a second how great you felt? Now, forget the outcome and the excitement level of the game. And it was great seeing you at that game, too, by the way. The crowd was super loud. But just after everything up to Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, then Saturdays, you wake up Sunday. That's on the horizon. You got good seats. There's going to be some really good players playing right in front of you. That literally, it's hard for people of your ilk to find the smell the roses moments, or at least acknowledge them. That was one.
And honestly, those are the ones where I actually can wake up and say, this is the 15-year-old inside of me, who, had to work at his high school job to afford the 700 level seats in the Philadelphia arena, is really, really, just feel so grateful, for the opportunities. And we've got great friends of the Wolves that take great care of us. And so, like to your point, there is some element of snapping the smell of the roses, and just so appreciative of all the opportunities, all the great people who congratulated us on the draft. That was really heartwarming. Just all the hard work we do. It is nice to hear that from people. And then again, to have my wife be there, enjoying, and, she's into that game now. Like, she's in there, talking scheme, talking ball. It's awesome. It's one of our favorite things to do. It's just a blessing.
She saw passing game coming before passing game unfurled, right? So you got 2 on the wing, you got 2 down by the box and the point guard. So she's next to you saying, okay, Quace, here's the deal. They're going to be 2 picks down. They're both going to flash into the key, then come out. If that's not open, you're going to see a back pick, and that's where they're going to look for something called Jackson Hayes.
That level of she's incredible the way she talks about the game, and then she'll ask me some interesting questions about team building. So it's actually a great way to bridge to talk about my work and sometimes some things I think of. And Tim Connolly, he's so great. He'll come down at halftime and talk to us. And my favorite moment was how much fun he was having. Mm-hmm. And I remember telling to Chelsea, I got to make sure I'm having as much fun as he was having. And now that was one of the best basketball games I've been to, maybe in my life, definitely in a long time. So obviously that was easier to be having fun, but just the joy that he had on his face, playoff game, playing it for it all, and he's just like, man, this is great. And so I want to make sure that when I'm in those moments up in the booth with my guys, and I'm appreciating those moments.
So it wasn't a complete smell the roses moment because you were still thinking about work, talking about the draft on the drive there.
It's a never-ending thing.
I understand,
but in a fun way. Just again, I'm so proud of the group. We accomplished what we wanted to accomplish, and ultimately, you don't know what that means. But we set forth goals and we accomplished them, and at that basic level, I'm very proud.
All right, last one on the Wolves fan line. And you're watching these games, aren't you?
Very intently,
right? And you'll be watching tonight or listening on KFAN shortly after 9:00. But tell me what you think about this. I feel like Minnesota took the best shot the Los Angeles Lakers can unfurl with this current iteration of the squad, and they still won. Do you see it that way?
I mean, what an incredibly resilient performance that was. Every time the Lakers made a run to go up 10, and you forget what it's like to have 2 great players on the court, and Luka and LeBron, and how easy it makes it on offense. Minnesota plays so hard on defense, and there's just still going to be some open shots because you have to cover 2 elite players like that. And even in spite of that, they came back, they defended, they rebounded, they created shots on the other end. You talk about shot making. Nas coming off the bench.
How about that?
I mean, that was
after a rough 3 quarters.
I mean, awesome Jersey guy. So I'm always going to support him and just and then Ant. I mean, just the will. It's cool. We say this word dog a lot. And I was talking to my wife about this, and that's what it looks like in the flesh. Just a competitive fury almost, that I'm not letting this team lose, and they're going to have to peel me off this court before they do. So to see that up close on a court with LeBron James and Luka Doncic, and to know that that's the baddest guy I thought on the floor in terms of mentality and will, was a cool thing to watch.
That Nas Reed point you just made, I mean, like say you were sitting next to J.J. McCarthy, your 22-year-old quarterback, really any player, but specifically the younger ones. I mean, what a wonderful example you would have had in front of you. Hey, Nas couldn't get out of his own way for a little while. Then he got aggressive, went to the basket, got to the line, and guess what happened? He missed 2 free throws. So he's got a lot of things going on in his mind. Yeah. Coach believed in him in the 4th quarter. He believed in himself. Yep. He compartmentalized, put it all behind him, and hit 2 of the biggest 3-pointers of his life.
But he got going with that little half hook, didn't he? Remember?
Yes.
I think they had a small guy,
baby hook,
like a little half hook, and then he hit those threes. I mean, and those were tough shots. He's a shot. I mean, that's the thing.
I love it.
Take no credit from the Lakers. They played good defense. They didn't sub anybody, so they were on fumes. But like the Minnesota hit some tough shots, and like you said, they can beat anybody. When you got the baddest dude in the gym, you got a team full of resilient players. They can beat anybody.
All right, the Minnesota Vikings extended Andrew Van Ginkel through the 2026 season. That news popped yesterday. This is another high character guy who's really, really good at what he does. And that combo clearly is important around here.
Absolutely. You always want to have foundational players. We call them program players that kind of meet the needs of your culture, meet the needs of your scheme fits. And then from a talent standpoint, obviously we've seen what he was able to do. In free agency, we actually tried to sign him to a 3-year deal. There was another team that came in and offered a 2-year deal that we had to compete with. So, you obviously always want the longer term deal as much as possible, knowing that if he plays well, this is the type of thing that you're going to be able to do. So look, we're excited to add a year, and also really to reward him for the year he had, so he would make more money this year. And we're excited about that group. Dallas, we think is going to play incredibly well this year. And part of the reason when we drafted Dallas, we already had Van Ginkel and Grenard, and we knew we'd be able to play them, the 3 of them together, just because of their versatility. Van Ginkel's ability to play linebacker. Dallas has the mental ability to play linebacker and did some of that at Alabama. So just the ability to get them 3 on the field at the same time, but also that's an edge group where you want them firing off the ball. You don't want them necessarily playing high into the 90% play time. So there's just going to be space in a rotation as well.
With Andrew Van Ginkel, and you don't pursue him in free agency and then pay him the way you pay him if you didn't like him. But I would imagine, whether it's the 11.5 sacks, everything that went his work against the run, everything that went into his year last year. What did you what did your staff pull out of him and what get from him that maybe, I don't want to say surprised you, but wasn't necessarily on film with what you had seen before you signed him?
Well, I would say that, for him, the big opportunity he got in Miami was just that there was injuries in front of him. Mm-hmm. And that last, I think I want to say it was 9 games, he just got to play. Yep. The first time in his career, he really got to play starters minutes. Mm. And you started to see what it could look like when you involve him in games. You see that play demeanor, that hustle he plays with, play on every down, 50 snap basis. And he started to pressure the quarterback. He's making plays in the run game. And so, with Flo, obviously, with his experience with him, and you just saw that take that to another level, to be more consistent, to make those plays, and also the way we play on defense, him becoming the force player and a player that we want to be involved in, saying, hey, we're channeling a lot of plays his direction. He's smart, instinctive, athletic, and if you're going to, bring players in his orbit often, that's not going to be good for the offense. So that's something we got to see at a high level, and our coaches really help bring that out of him.
That's fascinating because it meshes your job now and your equity, your background with stock trading because, of course, every general manager wants to buy the Andrew Van Ginkels cheap, get the most out of them, and then we gladly will compensate you fairly. Sure. Blake Cashman was the same thing. For sure. Because like if you look at his game logs and his reps in Houston, he had that one game where in the season before you guys got him, Denzel Perryman was out, so he had to be the green dot guy as the middle linebacker. Might have had 16, 19 tackles in the game. So the opportunity presented itself. He was the quarterback of the defense, but then Perryman comes back and he goes back to his role. Yep. So that everybody wants to do that, but actually accomplishing it, like what are the keys?
Yeah, a lot of it, and I think you said it perfectly, and that's a great segue to my old job. My old job was connecting the dots and trying to sometimes see what's there that might not be obvious. You don't get a chance to buy the stock or the commodity, whatever I was trading, where it's obvious, where we know why the prices are going to be high. Supply and demand makes it sense, or this company's got all these earnings. Like, you don't get the chance to buy Amazon when Amazon's already the biggest company in the world. You have to take the chance on them when they're not making any money. Right. And that's no different than in evaluating a player. We pride ourselves in being glass half full and trying to see what players can do. And we try and connect the dots and say, hey, if these situations happen, if this context happen, how could this player who looks like a fringe starter become a real starter, a starter be an impact starter? All those different levels, all the while knowing that our schemes and our coaches and our development are going to get the best out of people. Our training staff's, Tyler's staff's going to get the best out of them from an availability and performance standpoint. So a lot of that goes into the bet we're making, and you're just trying to, at the end of the day, win on the margins, as we always say, to get a player that everybody else is going to have to pay X. We just want to pay X minus in a still respectable manner. And we're going to pay that because we were early, not because we're being disrespectful to the player. Mm-hmm. And then as they continue to prove themselves, we'll continue our contract with them going forward.
Well, and that could be into 2025, that premise plays with Isaiah Rodgers.
Absolutely.
The corner. However, what's interesting here is, like with Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen and Will Fries and Ryan Kelly, their stocks, I don't want to say that they've maxed out or topped out, but, to say with those guys at those stages of their careers, we're getting this sucker at $4, and I promise you it's going to be 13 by middle of the season. That's not necessarily the approach with them, right?
Absolutely right. It's a portfolio, right? For day one of free agency, you're not getting, you're not missing. These aren't like hidden things, right? Everybody, Will Fries was a very popular man for a good reason. He made himself into a really good player, sound in both phases. So that's not something that the Vikings kind of, we're predicting others now. First day of free agency can be, hey, this is a player that we still think is a cent. Even though he's really good, we still think he's got a little bit more. So this contract will still be valuable to us for a lot of different reasons, because of his work ethic, for his contribution to our culture, all those different things. So those are smaller bets. Isaiah Rodgers, like you said, those can be a little bit bigger bets, or even the draft, for example, or CFA. All those are kind of the kind of the flyers, the stock, the early stage stocks that you're getting where they haven't proved concept
penny
yet.
stocks.
Penny stocks, yeah, sure, that's a good term. So it's just a portfolio decisions, and we welcome them all.
Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, general manager of the Minnesota Vikings from Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center. I'm Paul Allen. Brett Blakemore produces back at the 651 Carpets Plus studios, and J.J. McCarthy had a press conference yesterday. He's such an engaging young man. I mean, it's from like the first time I met him here about a year ago after you drafted him. He has a hockey upbringing, and doing this radio show as long as I have, I've had players from all sports on the radio show on a weekly basis or not. And the hockey players, maybe because they're like the fourth most popular of the core four of pro sports, that league itself, kind of a regional item in certain situations. They appreciate things that other people don't generally appreciate. And he's so engaging when he talks to the media and talks to people. Do you see it that way?
He's such an earnest person. That's one of the things you realize about him. We talk a lot about the perfect football player, players who, when they step between the lines, become different. They become like Ann Edwards, where they just, you're going to have to peel them off the floor before they lose a game. But the second they step outside those white lines, they're just earnest, good-hearted, good humans, want to care about people around them, all the charitable work he does, all the uplifting he does in this building. So I see it the same way. I really was impressed by the press conference he gave yesterday, and I texted him that you talk about alignment. We say that a lot, and that term, me versus myself. If you go back to my opening press conference, I talked about that. If you go back to Kevin talks about that. You go back to JJ, and that's the way that people like us can compete the way we do, but also be kind of affable, positive people, because my willingness to wake up and be the best version of myself has nothing to do with you. Mm-hmm. And so I don't necessarily want you to not be the best version of yourself. In fact, I'd probably prefer you do that so you can push me. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to wake up the next day and hold myself to a high standard. It's that continual pushing of yourself, that it's not about noise or narratives or other players. It's just about me. When it's all said and done, sitting on the couch and being like, I have no regrets. I have zero regrets about how I approached this career, about how it ended up, because I couldn't have done anything else. And you talk about alignment between Kevin, myself, JJ, a lot of leaders on this team, and it's cool to see him just continue to live that.
Okay, now, whether with JJ, players here, or players you've seen over the years, it's like, Harrison Smith, Jonathan Grenard, Brian O'Neill, Aaron Jones, and they all give JJ McCarthy glowing praise. Now, we've been around long enough to know whether it's elevator music or it's authentic. And with these guys, specifically Harrison, who I've known since he got here, he's not going to say something before he's just effusively going to lie about something to finish a press conference. Now JJ turned 22 years of age 3 months ago and commands a room quite well. And they'll talk about the leadership traits that are developing, but the veterans can already see are present. From your knowledge, do you think that some just have that special gene, or do they need to be developed, or both?
No, I think certain people just have that ability to they stand in front of a room that they can galvanize a group of people around a cause. When he arrived here, he obviously was a rookie quarterback, and I remember walking in the building and he's leading walkthroughs with his rookie skill players, leading whenever he could. Is that the most important thing that OTA that day? Maybe not, right. But he's just going to lead the way he can whenever he can, because that's just in him. And I saw that as just kind of, I was just smiling to myself, because like that's just what leaders do. They find opportunities to lead. And that's who he is. I do think some of that is born in you. I do think you can obviously develop that, and he's a very meticulous student of the game. He studies a lot of that in the off season. Just a really accomplished reader. He'll send me books that I probably need to find some time to read. So it's part nature, but I would say part nurture as well.
Kwesi Adofo-Mensah from Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center. Donovan Jackson, the first round pick last week, seems to fit that mold too. He had a press conference last week, late in the week, where he absolutely owned the room. I really enjoyed his presser, the levity, the authenticity, and everything, and it was natural. So You talked about Donovan with yours truly and others last week. I just want to rattle through the rest that you drafted and get your quick twitch. What stands out with Maryland wide receiver Ty Felton?
Somebody that just kind of jumped off the tape in the way they play. A lot of receivers nowadays, just some of these offenses that play a lot of tempo, you don't really feel a play style and a demeanor. This guy jumped off the tape, just the suddenness in and out of breaks as he's cutting. Really the quick acceleration with the ball in his hands, and then a mindset like he's trying to crib every ball he gets. Now he doesn't. Obviously that's not possible, but you can see there's a mindset that I'm trying to score. He's a 6'1", 183, 184-pound player, so not the biggest guy, but he plays a lot bigger and stronger. Loved what he did with the ball in his hands, and then you get to the special teams tape, and the special teams tapes guys are loving him. That doesn't happen often. That a GM or an executive will be watching a receiver and love that tape, and the special teams coordinator comes in and says, "We got to have this guy." That doesn't happen very often. So when you get the uniquely talented player who also has just a gritty mindset, those are two things that you love.
A Georgia defensive lineman, Ty Ingram Dawkins.
Yeah, versatility. I would say the versatility drinking game that you could play with the Vikings in terms of what we crave on the defensive side of the ball. He's the epitome of that. You talk about somebody with length, quickness. There are some flashes that look like some players that, we could all name and be really fired up if he became just a fraction of those guys. And he's on his football journey. He knows that he's kind of his best football's in front of him. He played behind some really great players and got to see some great things up close at Georgia. But we see him as a player that'll be, kind of in that 5-tech, 6-tech world, give us the ability to stand up on the edge as well, and then kick inside and 3-tech and pass likely and be able to win with quickness. He's still developing his game. He's got a lot of traits, a lot of stuff in his body. And Marcus Dixon, I think, is, one of the up and coming rising, coaches in this league.
Love him.
And love to, trust players with guys like that because he's positive, he's passionate. He's going to leave no stone unturned to get the best out of him. For the layman, which would be me, 5 and 6 tech, 5 and 6 technique, would that be defensive end? Defensive end-ish. Yeah. It's whether you're in a 4-3-3-4 or whatever, but yeah, he's on base downs, we're going to rely on his length, his instincts to kind of help us in the run game, set edges and work versus tight ends at times. And then in pass rush, we're going to transition to wanting his quickness.
Linebacker Kobe King from Pennsylvania State University.
Yeah, really surprised to get him where we got him. We're kind of, the draft board, the way it works is sometimes names start sticking out and, we do a lot of draft simulations where we go through exercises and routine scenarios and different things like that. And he kept coming up on a couple of our simulations. So I'm like, all right, let me make sure I do a deep enough dive to make sure that if he's there, I'm comfortable with the risk. And so that's not just a film evaluation. That's reading the background reports from our great as college scouts and where they talk about the infectious energy he has at practice, the ability to communicate to the defense. And you can see it on film. He's a maestro out there. He's a point guard telling people where to go, different things like that. And then you talk about the athlete, going out, watching the pro day, seeing how strong he is, how explosive he is, and then a knockback tackler. This game, sometimes people can make it harder than it is. You need to be people who can tackle the ball, who can run to the ball and tackle the ball. He's going to help us a lot in that regard. And you talk about the new kickoff play, which is, add 7 outside zone-ish type plays a game, 4 to 7 outside zone-ish type, mid-zone type plays a game. We think we added a really great tool in that regard.
What about tight end Gavin Bartholomew?
Gavin, man, he was somebody, we obviously knew we were going to take a tight end. That was one of those.
Deep tight end draft too, right?
Very, deep, I would say deep in parts.
Okay.
Definitely deep in parts. I think there was a group of solid players kind of there that we were just monitoring. There were some guys that got taken before and after him that we were, would have been fired up about, but Gavin really set himself apart. First and foremost, he played as a freshman, talking about coming in as a young kid playing in that league. That was an offense led by Kenny Pickett and Jordan Addison, a young Jordan Addison at the time. And so they really to come in and really be like, he's not the biggest guy, he's big enough, but not the biggest guy, but really has just a natural play strength to him. Not the longest arms, but can use his lower body talent to get leverage in the run game. And then we just think there's a separation ability latent in him. You can see it from the way he bends, the way he explodes off the ball, especially in his pro day. Coach Angelico, again, I'm going to credit our coach. I think he's one of the best in the league, doing it. And so, with him getting the chance to watch TJ Hawkinson every day win and separate, watch Josh Oliver block, I think that's going to be the environment to grow him as a player. We see him being he's going to start off on special teams, obviously, and just give us, tight end support. And then we'll kind of go from there. But really just loved everything about him. He's all ball. He's competitive. And we're excited to add him to the room.
What kept you from drafting a corner or a safety?
Yeah, corner, I think sometimes it's the way the board falls. There were opportunities. Obviously, we would have loved to take an opportunity, but it's got to be the right fit. You want length, you want speed, you want all these things, but you got to play in our defense, which requires guys to do inverted safety stuff and different things like that. So they got to be instinctive. We want guys to take the ball away. And so there were opportunities to do it, but it's got to fit from that scheme, medical, all those things combined versus your other needs. And, again, we were fired up with the guys in that room. We signed Isaiah Rodgers, but we also got Mekhi Blackman coming back off of injury. We got Dwight McClellan, who played, good football for us in the preseason, and we're excited about. And then Okudah is somebody we signed in free agency that we're excited about resuming his career. He's as talented as anybody that got drafted on Friday or Thursday or Friday.
Kwesi, are you 3 years and change into it now? Are you learning from agents or from players who get here that college free agents, they want to come here?
Yeah.
It's like when this whole thing pops, agents are like, all right, well, this team's good, but don't trip on that because they give people chances and the facility's second to none. And they're not afraid to pay their college free agents if they really like you. I mean, all that stuff stands out with these college free agents, doesn't it?
Well, 100%. And I want to make it clear. I think a lot of times, when I get a chance to read media in the morning when I'm working out, I'll try and, look at something online. And a lot of times my name gets said. And I just always want to pause people on that. And obviously I run the process and all those things, but there are so many people that are involved in this that's why free agents come here. They come here for the Paul Martins and for the Chuck Petersons because of the care they give the people, and they've given for years. They come here for the facilities from the ownership. They come here because we have Taylor Brooks sending them care packages and notes and saying how much we care about you and want you to come to be a Viking. Our coaches Zooming and staying in contact with them. We call it our sickness process, led by Demetrius Washington, Ryan Grigson, getting these names up early so that GM actually knows them. So when these agents call, I'm not just giving like a fluff pitch. I'm actually telling them very specifically why I like their player and how they're going to fit in our scheme. So there's a lot of people that deserve credit for that. I want to make sure that they get the shine they deserve. And we're going to keep trying to win at the CFA process, keep winning at the draft process, pro process, win on the margins everywhere we can.
And the newest one from last year could be Gabriel Murphy.
Absolutely.
With Patrick Jones off to Carolina. Hey, there it is right in front of you. We got these three. Yeah, we know that. But Patrick had those three too, and he played a lot.
It's the portfolio effect, man. You never know what's going to happen, who's going to leave, and we don't know which of these prospects are going to come to fruition and be the players we want them to be. But we're excited. We got a lot of people in that room, and we think somebody's going to take a step forward.
1.5 more. Here's the half. Ever been prank called with some rube pretending to be an agent?
Oh man, that's a shame.
Well, there's a fine today too. Darn, yeah, Falcons got fined $250,000. Albrecht got fined $100,000.
I did not see
just
that.
popped, right before you walked in. That's what we do. We break news.
Yeah, that's and I don't want to speak on the fine.
I don't care about that. But have you ever been prank called?
No, I haven't. And look, I've been young before. I've been done some things that weren't always perfect. So I don't want to
same.
On any type of mountaintop saying I'm better than anybody else, but that's unfortunate. That's a big weekend for that kid. I'm glad he got drafted to a great place in Cleveland, and it's his chance to set his destiny now.
All right, I want to end it like this. Not that doesn't mean that there's not more to be done. In fact, I bet a lot that there will be players added in the off season, probably close to training camp, stuff like that, with the compensatory situation in the rearview mirror. But Mason and Jones, your running backs. More physicality potentially with the interior of the offensive line. You added speed to the wide receiver room. We'll see what happens with Rondale Moore, but when he's healthy and happy, he's fast. Hargrave and Allen to bolster the middle of the defense. Is the design predicated on playing multiple styles and winning multiple ways?
That's exactly right. That's the way, I don't know if this is what you say in an interview, but I think when you close your eyes and picture a championship team and you just throw out a score, any score, and you got to tell yourself we could win that game, and you have to mean it, 10-7. And if that gives you they have you heart palpitations and you aren't there because that game could potentially happen in a playoff game. Can you win a 40-30 shootout? Can you win a game where you can't throw it? You got to ask yourself, can I win any type of game to win a championship? That's ultimately what it's going to be, because we can't control the type of game that we get, the matchup, for whatever reason, the weather, whatever it is that dictates that game. And so we really want to build ourselves the type of team that can win any type of game. If it's going to be a slugfest, 8 possession because both teams can run the football, let's line up and figure out if we can be that type of team. And so that's what we tried to build this offseason, all the while knowing our foundation is going to be, Kevin's ability to manipulate and create explosive plays in the passing game. But now we can counter that with ability to run the football on the defensive side of the ball. We can do exotic things and different things like that with blitzing and all the inverted coverages we do. But now can we rush 4 and play coverage? Can we do that in the game? And so just giving us the variability and the types of games we play. Look, we're not shy in our ambition, just like every other team isn't shy in their ambition. We're trying to be the last team standing. We'll do whatever we can to do it, and we think that it takes the ability to win different types of games.
We could do this for hours. I really enjoy our chats, but you just triggered something with me about McCarthy.
Yep.
Which and this popped up with me, and I got loud about it on 9 to noon. During all the Rodgers talk and stuff like that, when people would mesh. Okay, all of just in the talk radio world. I felt it was dramatically shortchanged, and it's still underplayed. The offensive staff you have, specifically led by the head coach, and how they can minimize things with McCarthy as he grows. They can maximize on things that they know are good, but maybe people haven't seen it yet. Absolutely. You can't shortchange this coaching staff with a 22-year-old quarterback knowing what game shape is going to be with these new components that have joined the team, right?
Absolutely right. And you're talking about coaching staff, and obviously I was involved in the plan. We talked about bringing up a young quarterback, Kevin's interview. And so we didn't know the name would be J.J. McCarthy, but we did know that a name would be part of that. So that you're talking about a gradual process in terms of development, reps, the type of team we want around him so that we can elevate him to be his best version of himself while he's a young player. This is all just coming to fruition, but it's been taking a lot of planning. Kevin deserves a ton of credit. Wes Phillips, Josh McCown, I think is, obviously people know his star, and there's a reason why people know his name. Just there's a lot of great coaches involved, and we're happy that they're on the Minnesota Vikings side.
I have to have your best 20 seconds on Sam Howell, who's I'm not going to say he's QB2 because I just know what I saw and what I heard about Brett Rippon last year. Yeah. I want to give him a chance to be Absolutely. QB2. Sam Howell,
like we said earlier, though, just on the portfolio thing, we love Brett. We want to put a bunch of good players in the room and see who shakes out, but Sam, somebody that we obviously did in the 2022 process, really liked a lot of things about him. We just weren't at that position where we wanted to take a quarterback then, but, I got to see him play in Washington that year. I'm good friends with Martin Mayhew, the GM, so I would always hit him up and ask him about him. And there are moments there where you thought he was going to be the guy. They dropped him back to pass a ton, and then, he got hit a bunch, and that can happen to a young quarterback. And those are things we try to avoid, obviously, in ours. But man, there were some moments where he put the team on his back. That's flat out. I'll go game for game with you.
Yep.
With games where
like that Eagles game. They lose at the wire, but he had 4 touchdowns.
There was a stretch there, I want to say, where he played, it was 3 to 4 games where he had 11 touchdowns, 1 interception, just really good football. Some of the stuff, the wheels came off towards the end of the year, and that can happen in this league when you drop back a young quarterback that often. But, when he came to my office the other day, I told him I always wanted to meet him because this guy is out there competing. He's dragging 2 guys for a 3rd and 13 conversion. And he just walks back to the huddle. His teammates are going crazy, and he walks back to the huddle. I was like, I want to just make sure you had a pulse, man.
You're
and
right.
He just starts laughing. He's like, you're talking about the New England run, aren't you? And I'm like, he's like, yeah, my dad always taught me to, stay even keeled. But he's like, there are moments where I probably need to get people fired up. And we kind of laughed about that. But we're excited to have him. He's super talented. Like you said earlier, these players can evaluate. When Harrison Smith evaluates J.J. McCarthy, that means something to me. We want them to make sure when the ball hits their hands or they see him play, they see him run, they know why we brought him in, and they'll know very quickly how talented this guy is. And we're excited to add him to the room. We think it's a really good quarterback room. Obviously, not as proven as maybe some others, but our belief in what they can do in this league, we're fired up about it.
Spectacular. Thank you.
My man.
Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, general manager for the Minnesota Vikings. We'll be right back.
Fan.
Wolves and Lakers this evening, shortly after 9 o'clock. KFAN, one of our favorites, Dane Moore, at Dane Moore NBA via Twitter. Follow him as 9 to noon does if you're so inclined, and listen to his podcast, the Dane Moore Podcast. And Dane joins us from Southern California. Dane, it's Paul Allen. Are you feeling a closeout tonight? Like, what's your heartfelt vibe? Are you feeling a closeout?
I am, yeah, which is weird because I feel like when I came on with you before the series, I was as skeptical about the Wolves winning this series, I think, as anybody in Minnesota media was. But I think that they're just showing that they have advantages on this team. I think about this matchup, and I'm like, all right, well, what does this look like if the Lakers win? And I think last game, seeing Luka and LeBron both go off, and the Wolves still having a reasonable path to win, there's just not as many holes for this team to fall into against this Lakers team as I at least personally thought going into the series.
I love that, and about the only thing I could add to it is, it's the ancillary pieces, the secondary type players, the role players. They generally play better at home. So, Gabe Vincent hit those 2 3-pointers at home. Then you couldn't find him with a searchlight the rest of the game. It may be something like that. But the Wolves would have to descend a bit to some form of mean for that to happen, right?
Yeah, but JJ didn't even play any role player the whole second half of Game 4. They don't have any confidence in those guys, man. I think that's what we missed going into this series is they have significantly fewer guys that they feel comfortable going to than the normal team in the playoffs. We're just looking around. There's a lot of teams that are trimming their rotation. Well, the Wolves aren't. And that's been another realization for me in this playoffs, which I think we knew, right, kind of come the second half of the year. But that's just that this Wolves team has the best bench in the NBA. That's not being a homer or hyperbolic or anything. This team, bringing in Naz, bringing in Dante, bringing in Nikhil, they're able to shape shift in ways that make them. It gives them the most dynamic depth in the playoffs in the entire NBA. We're seeing them use that to their advantage. They haven't closed the last 2 games with Rudy or Mike, right? They're closing with Naz and Dante there. That is a huge value, not just by numbers, but in stylistic shift. It allows them to play, smaller, to be able to switch on the perimeter against Luka and LeBron when they're going with Naz out there. I don't know. If that's what the Lakers are thinking, and they're like, yeah, man, Gabe Vincent, he's going to hit a couple threes. That's why we're going to win this. So it's not that to me. I think it needs to be Luka being absolutely incredible while LeBron is incredible too. And quite frankly, I think Jaden McDaniels needs to get in foul trouble. Otherwise, the Lakers don't have a shot.
Brilliant. Now, off the depth piece, so I don't forget, because I want to talk about Luka and LeBron tonight and the ball sharing in a pressure pack moment. But Nickeil Alexander-Walker off the best regular season of his life. He hasn't been great this series, and it seems, you're at all the games, I'm not, but it seems when I see Finchie or the coaches get into Alexander Walker, it's generally for some defensive assignment I'm guessing he missed. What do you think's happening with him this series?
Well, I think he's just the 8th guy, man, and so you just have you got a more limited minutes, right? I don't know, what did he play in the last game, 14 minutes or something, 12 minutes? You don't really get the opportunity as much when you're the 8th guy to make a mistake or two. And he's made a mistake or two in these series, but we have that small of a role. I don't think you really get to catch a rhythm. And I think for him specifically, right, let's picture the best Nickeil Alexander-Walker games during the regular season. Well, he's hitting his threes, which I think he's still capable of doing in this series, but he's guarding the ball, right? He's guarding the opposing team's best creator. And the issue with the Lakers is their best creators are Luka, who's 6'8", or LeBron, who's 6'9". I think Nickeil is an incredible point of attack defender, but those guys got 60, 70 pounds on him. It's just, it's not a series that, kind of like with Rudy, too, which I'm sure we'll talk about. It's just not like a series where the size of the opposing team kind of meets up with their skill set.
Dane Moore, at Dane Moore NBA via Twitter and the Dane Moore podcast. You can learn more about that via the Twitter feed. LeBron and Luka and sharing. Okay. I mean, LeBron shot 2 times in the fourth quarter Sunday, which it seems misguided to me. I mean, I know he went to the line a bunch, but nevertheless, this is the most pressure packed game those two alphas have had together. So I'm just curious to see how LeBron and Luka share it tonight. What do you think?
Yeah, they need both of them, right? That's what we've learned, in this series we saw when we were in LA before, and LeBron wasn't great in games 1 and 2, right? He wasn't bad, but he wasn't what he did in Minnesota, and it is seeming that they need him to be the version of him in games 3 and 4, while Luka is the superb version of him. Because again, what are we going to for additional reinforcements? Last game, Austin Reeves played pretty well. He hit 5 threes. Rui hit 5 threes. Rui Hachimura. I don't know. That's what I'm saying is,
yeah.
I don't see the pathway for them of being able to win unless LeBron and Luka have elite games, or, which is always a possibility with this team, the Wolves just massively shoot themselves in the foot, kind of like they did in game 2. I guess that's a possibility. If they can beat themselves. But if they're going to get beat by the Lakers, I just think it takes an incredible Luka and LeBron game, which isn't out of the question. But we know the Wolves have defenders to be able to at least slow that.
Do you think J.J. Redick and the Lakers have backed off the Luka versus Rudy Gobert spread the floor because it's not working, specifically from 3? Why do you think they backed off that?
Because it wasn't working, PA.
Right.
It doesn't. Luka. Obviously Luka's incredible, but Rudy is not bad at all. Rudy is good at switching onto these guys. We've seen this. I don't know. I mean, I kind of bought into the narrative before he was on the Timberwolves. I'm sure you did too. Rudy in space, they'll let him get out on the perimeter. Well, that was dumb. We made that narrative up. That is not true. Rudy is extremely good at switching onto the perimeter. He's even against Luka. If you look at the numbers, yeah, Luka hit that step back on him last year. Yeah, he's going to make him look dumb once. But in the aggregate, I asked Rudy about this before the series started. He said, look at it over hundreds of possessions and what the average production is out of that. And he was so right that in games 1 and 2, Luka was like, clear it out, give me Rudy, clear it out, give me Rudy. Well, the numbers sucked when the Lakers did that. So you know what JJ told him, as I think indicated by the fact that, do you remember in game 3 or 4, Luka being like, get me Rudy, let's go? No, they told him, they had to have told him not to do that. And so that's this idea that we created, or that the dumb media created, that this is going to be some huge hole that the Lakers have to poke. Again, that's what I'm talking about. What are the things? What are the real things that the Lakers have in this series that we go, advantage Lakers, this is a problem they're going to need to compensate for? Somebody made that up, that the Rudy thing was that. It wasn't. So much so that it seems, by given that Luka stopped doing it completely, that Redick and his coaching staff were like, Luka, stop doing that. Going at Rudy one-on-one is not an advantage situation. People can be disappointed with what Rudy's doing offensively in this series. Sure, he needs to be more of an impact there. But defensively, whether he's at the rim or he's out guarding Luka, Rudy's still playing like one of the best defensive players in the entire NBA. He just doesn't get the credit for that. I don't know, because he's French or something.
Your podcast, the Dane Moore podcast, maybe this was the most recent one, but I saw it this morning. I really, really loved what you guys had to say about Anthony Edwards, Naz Reid, and Jaden McDaniels coming of age, and how it's getting better. I mean, it's getting real good, isn't it? And one of your favorite plays was the magnification of the bit.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's just and we use the term high basketball IQ, low basketball IQ, and it's a little pejorative and maybe sometimes disrespectful to call anybody lower IQ in anything, right? But when Naz and Jaden and Ant were in their earlier 20s a couple of years ago, they were quote unquote lower basketball IQ players. They didn't have that split second feel for reading, all right, I'm here, I'm going here, natural on offense or defense, And I just thought the last 5 minutes of that game in crunch time, when you have all three of those young guys in there, 25 years old and younger, you just saw that feel, right? And it's just was like a situation where these guys seemed like they've been in this position, before, and were organically able to sort of find each other and play off of each other. And, starting with Anthony playing high IQ basketball. And I mean, I know we're all locked in on the playoffs right now in this series, and let's see where this team can go. But those guys, I think Nas is 25, Jaden's 24, Ant's 23. It allows you to kind of picture this in 2-3 years and be like, all right, when those guys are in their primes, the feel is honed more. They're even more physically imposing. They've taken another step in their game. We've always called it the second timeline, even going back to when Gerson Rosas drafted these dudes. There's been this allure of what the second timeline could look like, and I think we thought would never really start until maybe Rudy Gobert was gone and Mike Conley maybe retired, but the second timeline's going right now, and I think they've won them, game 4 by that feel that they didn't have a couple years ago.
All right, last one, and kind of off the Luka and Rudy question. Perhaps there's an obvious answer here that I'm missing, but why did the Lakers keep covering Julius Randle with Austin Reeves and not immediately doubling until the train gets on the tracks and it's going full speed? Then they collapse on Julius, but he's hitting those shots or getting to the line. But why do they keep doing that?
They've got good defenders, man. What do you say? What do you suggest? That's the issue in this entire series.
Right.
Is they don't have guys to guard Ant 1-on-1, and they don't have guys to guard Julius 1-on-1.
Yeah.
And that's why you see it when you watch the game. I mean, when you just pause your screen, when the Lakers are on defense, it doesn't look like when you pause your screen and you're watching other games. They are so tightly packed into the paint because that's their way of admitting we can't guard you 1-on-1. We can't guard Edwards 1-on-1. We can't guard Randall 1-on-1. So we need to have this help defense in there at all times, because if it is 1-on-1 or just a little bit of help, Ant's going to cook that. Julius is going to go through that. And that's why once they are packed like that and you see the Wolves getting a little into the middle and Julius is spraying it out, he's finding Nas in the corner, he's finding Jaden in the other corner, the threes are going to be open in this series. If they can drive, kick, and find those threes, there's opportunity in this series to make 20-plus threes per game. We saw that in game 1, right? It was Lakers packed in. Okay, we'll get it in. There's Nas in the corner. They can't guard 1-on-1, so you need to drive in and find. And when the Wolves do that, I don't think the Lakers have defensive answers for that because they can't guard individually.
Brilliant. Thank you for the time. Enjoy the game tonight. We'll talk soon, okay?
All right, dude. Later, man.
See you, bud. Dane Moore, at Dane Moore, NBA via the tweet machine. We thank him for his early morning contributions out Los Angeles way. Wolves and Lakers this evening on KFAN shortly after 9. Some breakaways from the fill-in Brett, and then the box for the Wolves on the radio. Alan Horton joins about 10, 12 minutes from now. This is KFAN.
Fan.
If you want to chime in on what's happening with your favorite KFAN shows, you can make your voice heard on the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line. Just let us know what you have to say by texting your message to 64686. That is 64686. Standard text message and data rates apply. Welcome back, 9 to noon, abbreviated breakaways segment here. Just a quick thought and then a quick bet before we get to Alan Horton on the other side of the break. Quick thought from me, trying to just think positively. It's almost over. And I'm not saying, it's almost over because the series is almost over and the season's almost over. I'm not saying that. Hello, PA. I'm saying it's almost over the cap penalties. It's almost over the excuses. It's almost over, well, given everything with our cap penalties and given everything, we're playing with one hand tied behind our back. It's pretty good that we're in this series right now. It's almost over. The excuses, it could be as soon as this weekend. The excuses and the reasons behind Wild defeats are over. And now we can start playing and start raising our expectations and hopeful with more money to spend in both hands at our disposal. It's almost over. We're almost on the other side of things. That's my thought. Quick on the bets side of things.
Wait, Double B, let me ask you a question off that last thing you said, and I'm glad you brought it up.
Okay.
With the way the Wild is playing. All right, so Kaprizov, has represented quite well this series, wouldn't you say?
He's been really good.
Okay, Joel Eriksson Ek has mostly been solid as the two-way centerman who's incredibly well respected around the league, right?
Agreed.
Okay, now you look at that, and then you look at some other facets of the team that are working well, and you know that you're going to be with them for a little bit. I just wonder if what other players around the league who maybe aren't in the postseason are seeing, the stability factor that should come even more 25-26 season after with the Parise Suter situation coming to an end. Do you think that players will want to play, free agents will want to come to the Minnesota Wild because of what they're seeing? Obviously the money needs to match, but off what they're seeing, this kind of looks like a cool team for whom to play, right?
I mean, I would want to play with Kaprizov. I would want to play with Matt Boldy if
Faber.
I was a hot free Faber as well.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this, they may not come, but people never want to leave, it seems like. We have trouble getting people out the door because it's such a great place to live. And, we've seen it. Bill Guerin, when he first came, called it a country club because people just wanted to stay and raise their families here because they loved it here so much, especially the hockey side of things with the hockey bent. So I think it's possible, and I think there's no better person to build around than Kaprizov.
Okay, now Brett's bets ballyhooed 9 to noon. I've explained it, and we it's a habit state, but we have a habit audience and a routine audience too. So I'm not going to go through the entire thing again. But he headed into yesterday 4-0, and he touted the Wild Golden Knights game to go over the 5.5. I'd say about 20, 25 minutes into that game, I thought you were an absolute cinch. Then things slowed down, specifically when Fleury came in, and man, they really tightened things up defensively, in front of, beloved HOF Flower. So you took your first L last night. But here's the deal is yesterday was the funeral. Tonight will be the wedding. Do you have anything you can tout us with Brett's bets today?
Now, typically, if you took an L on a bet, you probably shouldn't go back to that specific well, but I'm going to break all the rules today. Blues, Jets, Game 5 tonight. The over-under, once again, is 5.5. 3 out of the 4 games have broken that over-under mark. So I like it again in Winnipeg. If I was taking a winner, I would take the Jets. I think they win tonight at home. But I'm going to go with the Brett's bet. Overwhelming game in Winnipeg. 5.5 is the line. Overwhelming Game 5 for the whiteout.
Appreciate you, brother. Great job today, too, with a lot of moving parts. And one of those parts that are moving includes Minnesota Timberwolves radio play-by-play voice Alan Horton. At Wolves Radio is where you learn more about him via the tweet machine. He's in Los Angeles, and we will call him next to chat Wolves and Lakers, then talkbacks after that on the Wild and More. Don't leave.